Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, Ask MCT Chris. In today's session, we're going to create an app using PowerApps, and we're going to call ChatGPT in our app. So stay tuned, but before we start, let's watch my intro. If we want to embed ChatGPT to any of the applications that we are creating, we need to first create an account with OpenAI.com. And once you have created an account with OpenAI.com, you need to create an API key, copy that API key because we will embed that in our application. I will now go into my Power App, and before we create an app, we need to first create a custom connection pointing to our OpenAI. And to do that, we need to first go into the More, go to Discover All, and look for Custom Connectors. Let's pin that in our menu. And under the custom connector, that's when we will create our OpenAI connector. Click on the custom connector, create from blank, name your connector. In this case, I'm going to name this as ChatGPT, and then hit the continue button. You can upload an image, which I'm going to upload the image of the ChatGPT, and then you can put a little bit of a description regarding your connector, and then definitely we're going to pass the request using the HTTPS. For the host, we go into the documentation of OpenAI, go to the API reference and go to the chat, and you will see in here the URL where we're going to pass a request to the ChatGPT. Copy the host of api.openai.com and paste that under the host text box. Click on the security so that we will be redirected to the authentication type. We need to, of course, choose the API key. Name the parameter. I'm going to name it as API key. And then for the parameter name, let's just be consistent and look at a sample of how we pass the request to OpenAI. If you notice, the parameter under the header is content type and at the same time authorization, where we pass our key. And I will just copy that authorization, and that will be the name of the parameter. Leave that to header because we're passing that through the header of the HTTP request. Click on the definition, and this time we're now going to create an action. This action is the method that we need to call if we're going to use our ChatGPT, and that would be placed under the operation ID. So our method will be called Chat API, and I'm just going to name this to be ChatGPT API. We're now going to import a sample, which is this will define the requirements needed in order to make any request. So let's use the post as per documentation. The request has to be post, and then for the URL, we'll copy the URL of the completion, paste that in the URL, and for the header, you will see that we already passed the authorization, so all we need to do is type the content type, and also the value of that will be application JSON, and we need to paste it in here and get rid of that colon. And for the body, you will see that this is the body that we need to pass. So I'm going to copy that, go back to the PowerApps and paste that under the body. You will notice that we are using the GPT 3.5 Turbo, which is, if we go into the documentation and go under the model and click on GPT 3.5, this is the model that we're going to use, which is, it's the most capable GPT 3.5 model and optimized for chat at 1/10 of the cost of the DaVinci. And this model can understand and generate natural language or code. And in the message, this is going to be an array, so we will just leave the role empty and also the content empty for now, and we're going to pass the values in there when we test it. Hit the import, and after we have hit the import, we can now edit the content type, and then we will put in the default value, which is the default value is the application JSON. Let's make this required, and the visibility is just internal. And then we will go back and configure the body. Drop down and edit it. We will make this required, and we will make this important. And in the body, if you notice this content, role, and model, which is, if we go back to that API reference again, those are the content, the role, and the model. So under the content, we'll edit that. We will make it as a required field. It is also important. Go back, go into the role, edit it, make this required and also important, and then back again, and under the model we'll do edit and then required and important. And then let's go back, and then let's go choose the code. If you wanted to write a C# function, you can upload your code in here, but we're not going to do so. And let's create the connector. So once the connector has been created, we can now test the GPT. Let's click on the test, but before we need to test it, we need to create a connection. So let's hit that new connection in there, and we need to pass in here our API key. And the API key should be passed like this. We need to pass on bearer, the word bearer, and then our API key. So I'm just going to type in here, bearer. Just making sure I type it properly. And then paste your key. Create. And that will create a connection. Let's go back to our custom connectors and then edit that connector so we can test it. Test. It has detected that we have a connection to our ChatGPT. Our content type is application JSON. Our model should be the GPT 3.5 Turbo. The role would be the user. And we can type in here our question. Let's say we're going to type in here, who is the current Prince of Wales? Let's test the operation, and you will see that there is now a response. You need to copy that response in there. And then once we have copied that response, let's go back into the definition. And under the definition, you now choose the default and add an import from a sample where we need to paste the return under the body. Import that, update the connector, and that should be all good to go. Okay, it's now time for us to create our app. So under the app, let's create a Canvas app. Name your app. Let's say we're going to call this as ChatGPT app. We'll have it as a phone. Hit the create. Under the data, let's add a data that connects to our connector that we named ChatGPT. Add that, and then after which we can now create and add some, let's say, text input into our form. Let's add an icon. Have that icon beside the text box. And then on the on select of the icon, we're going now to call our ChatGPT. So that would be ChatGPT. There you go. And it has detected our method, which is Chat API. We'll call that open bracket. We need to pass the model and we need to pass the messages. So the model that we're going to use would be the GPT-3.5-turbo. And then the second parameter would be, if we get back to our documentation, this is the second parameter that we need to pass, which is the model. Those message is the second parameter, which we need to pass role and content. So what we wanted to do in here is we're going to create a collection, and I'm going to call my collection chat, and we need to pass on the role column, and then we'll pass the user value onto the role, comma, and for the content column, we need to get the value of this text input in here, which is, if I go back, that is called text input 1. So that would be text input 1 dot text. So that is the value that we're passing onto our content. And we will close the collection and we will have a semicolon in there. Oh, we need to close first the chat API. Now, once we call this, it will return a value, which is the response. So we will catch that in a variable. So I'm going to say set, and then the variable name would be var response, comma, and then we will close that there. So the response of this, or the output, will be catched into that var response variable. Now I wanted to save that onto the same collection, so I'm just going to say here collect, and the name of my collection, which is called chat, and then I'm going to pass on the var response. Now, if we go back to the documentation, this is the response of the ChatGPT if we make a request. And what we wanted to get is the first message. And that message is under the choices. And you will notice that there's also a role and there's also the content. So, to write that, So we're going to put the var response into our collection, and we can get this as the first. We wanted the first response, and in that response we'll call choices, which is coming from the choices in the response, and then we'll call the message, which is the message is under the choice. And then we'll close bracket and then semicolon. So what we have done in here is just the response will be placed in the collection. And then the next thing we need to do is clean or clear the text input by just calling the reset function, passing on the text input object. Okay. And then what we need to do now is we're going to just insert a gallery, which is we're going to insert a flexible height gallery. Okay. And then we will make this as the layout of this to be blank. And then the data source of this will be pointing to the collection. So we will just make this increase the size of this, and then we will now edit the gallery wherein we're going to now, inside this, we're now going to insert a text label. Just make that a little bit small, and then we will put the value in this as this item.role, and then we'll have another one. So I'll just do a copy paste in there, place it somewhere here, make this a little bit bigger, and then we will put the value of the content in there. Now what we can do in here is we will make that same size, but the auto height will turn that on. Let's test it now. Let's run and let's type our question. Hello. Press enter. The user said hello. ChatGPT is being fetched, and it will answer us, hello, hi, how can I assist you? What is PowerApp? And it will return to us a response. And there you go. PowerApp is a cloud-based platform developed by Microsoft. Beautiful. And there you go. Embedding ChatGPT inside our PowerApps. I hope you've liked this session. If you did, please hit that like button and please hit that subscribe for more tips and tricks from me. Thank you for watching.